Um, I wrote this book, which came from my research. It's called Applying Deep Democracy in Human Services. The research itself was called Snakes and Ladders of Organizational Change. And I came to the term snakes and ladders. Some of you may know this children's game, Snakes and Ladders. It's actually thousands and thousands of years old. And it's a game where you go up the ladder and then slide down the snake. I thought this game was such a beautiful picture of what it's like to be in an organizational system that is breaking apart and people are suffering, and where the team is more involved in its own power dynamics than the people that it's meant to serve. This idea of snakes and ladders, where there's one destination, there's a playful aspect, but it's also very serious. This game is all around the world. It is cross-cultural, and it has been going for thousands of years to teach children how to be a good human being. And the beauty of this game, which was such a parallel for me, when I heard Arnie talking about the stochastic nature of life, stochastic, it's a mathematical term. This thing that's going to happen is going to happen. How it happens and when it happens is unpredictable. And I find that so beautiful, that although we don't know what exactly will happen and when it will happen, the fact that it will happen is a known. You will get to the destination. You will go up the ladder and down the snake. This principle of tracking the signals that happen in the system and not quite knowing when things are going to explode, when they're going to get cool, how it will happen, I found was just a beautiful metaphor. And my question in my research that came from my experiences living and working with people with very complex needs in different parts of the world, what is it that enables some people to really come through as if enhanced and even stronger out of difficulties? Is it possible to actually find out if those very things apply in the same way to leaders, to the caregivers and practitioners, and to the people receiving services? I became gripped with this idea when I learnt about Arnie's concept of rank, that yes, there is positional rank or positional power in the role, but that is contextual to the situation within that role. The beauty of the inner power of psychological rank, meaning being centered, being able to get back on course when you're knocked off, being able to know your opponent even better than the opponent knows themselves, being able to know yourself and tune into the environment, spiritual rank, being able to detach from the trouble, to connect to something bigger. I thought to myself, maybe instead of looking at the clients in the organization like an afterthought while the problems happen in the team, what if we were to take a different viewpoint and say, could it be that these other aspects, these other innate powers that are not tied to the context of the role exist in the leaders, in the practitioners, and in the people receiving support? And if that's so, what if the focus could be on bringing those powers out in everybody? And maybe that would be a different way to focus on caregiving systems versus thinking some good people are here to look after some other people that need help. I was working in different countries, in different caregiving settings. And so I made a study with the people that I had known very well for a long time in those organizations that agreed to do it. I interviewed leaders, caregivers, and the people receiving services, many of whom have non-rational and non-traditional ways of communicating and expressing themselves, often in beautiful altered states, which meant that the interview process was in itself a wonderful playground of experience. Out of this process, I was able to find out the similarities across the different roles around psychological rank and spiritual rank and differentiate those with terms, with words, with language that would provide a new way of approaching a change process, approaching how we help people find the life that they want in such a way that we're talking about all of us versus the team members being so focused on themselves and sometimes the people being an afterthought or being so over-focused on the people that the team forgets about itself, as though we're separate parts of the system. I tried to find a language that everybody could use to create new kinds of ways of recognizing these really amazing skills that people had naturally. I discovered that it actually did happen this way, that the essence level, the spiritual aspects of the power really did produce the more psychological aspects, which really did turn into the CR aspects. The essence level, I asked people about their deeper vision. What was it that really moved them? And what was it that made life worth living? And what was it that enabled them to get through the terrible difficulties that were happening in these different settings? Some because there were big investigations around abuse, some because, for instance, in South Africa, the dismantling of apartheid and the rebuilding of the society that affected people with complex needs. In Scandinavia, dismantling the institutions. People were left in an apartment on their own and got really, really lonely and had all kinds of other complications that came from being away from their friends, even though those institutions had been terrible places. And in Canada, in another organization, and in the United States, the deinstitutionalization process also, there was a lot of fallout for the people themselves. In the dimension of deeper vision, the powers that were consistent across all roles were the power of an inner calling, an inner direction, to be able to follow your own path. The power of a global vision, especially for the leaders, this was really, really strong. So many people were motivated by actually wanting to make the world a better place. The power of love-based curiosity, to follow and ask and check with curiosity where this system wants to go, where this team wants to go, where this person wants to go. The inner strength from surviving adversity, this also at the level of deeper vision. And interestingly enough, the leaders were so devastated around this, even if they hadn't been present when bad stuff had happened to people. The whole process of making a public apology for the terrible things that had happened in people's lives. For the people who receive services, who also spoke about the inner strength from surviving adversity, they were so excited by that. So it was amazing to see the different affect from these different inner powers, depending on what role people were in. And the last one at this level was self-affirming beliefs. Critics of structural discrimination and systemic oppression and critics from personal history inside people's heads really, really make it hard to believe in yourself. And so that was a whole cluster that made it for me much easier to talk about spiritual rank, to talk about detachment, because this language itself came from the people. The second dimension of subjective experience, maybe what we would call psychological rank, there were also a number of dimensions that came out. Those people who were able to self-attune, self-attunement, self-regulate, be connected to their own inner centeredness, had a much better time not being knocked off course when the whole world went to shit. Excuse my language. Social attunement as well, not only to be able to tune into myself, but to be able to read the room, sense the signals, be able to work with what's actually going on in a signal-oriented way, facing the injustices of history. This is so important in this context where almost everybody has experienced injustice of some kind. And this being able to not just say, well, it wasn't my fault, I wasn't there, I wasn't the leader then, well, that was somebody else. But also for people who have been through that experience so often actually wanted to come back and tell the person how they felt about what they had done. That was amazing, amazing. And for many people who had been through those institutional experiences, wanted to teach others about what had happened so that it wouldn't happen to them. Two more inner powers around this subjective experience that require what we would call psychological rank is making conflict fruitful and facilitating collaboration, working with your inner team and the outer team. So that language really helped me a lot in these contexts to be able to talk about these things and bring these powers out in integrated groups where everybody is learning together. Everyone is team building together. Everyone is problem solving together because the language belongs to the whole of humanity. And in CR, I discovered that there were 3 tangible results around manifesting these powers. The first one is actually the ability to address injustice. The second one is applied transformational learning, so that everybody is involved in learning that actually develops these powers. And the third one is integrative community building. This brings in the topic of ableism, to live side by side and to integrate in a community building experience with people who historically and traditionally, for at least quite a while, have been seen as not worthy of existing. The workers themselves and the leaders need to work on our own inner ableism, to abilities within ourselves that we also marginalized, in order to open up to these brilliant and non-traditional skills and abilities that people with a whole range of complex needs have to bring to the world. I have to thank my teachers, and I have to say, if it wasn't for Max and Arnie and my friends in Australia when I was in South Africa, crying my eyes out every night because the power dynamics were so challenging with the dismantling of apartheid, and my friends who went to classes with Arnie and Max sent me little tiny micro cassettes that I would put in my ear at night and listen to these strange people talking about these strange ideas. And I thought, oh my God, that's it. I was listening to group processes, having never heard about it before, on the other side of the world. And that saved me.
Wow.
Because that gave me the idea, it gave me the confidence, it gave me the courage to try to do something different. And I realized that the world changes right here where you are in the moment, not in some other universe later when you've learned something else. So I tried to put all that into a way of seeing the skills that people actually bring, even when they do shitty things. The basic main idea is this enabled me to do what I always knew was possible, but didn't know how to even approach it, which is to follow the idea that the people with the least positional rank and power actually know where to go. And
Wow.
this way of talking about the innate powers gave me a way to show that to people who didn't believe it. And gorgeous and powerful way to live life.